Here is an idea that sounds completely backwards at first. Sharing power makes a country stronger, not weaker. Think about it for a moment. If you divide power, you are splitting it up and handing pieces to different people. That should make a government slower, messier, and weaker. So why would any country choose to do it on purpose? That puzzle is what this chapter is about. In a democracy, all power does not sit with one organ of government. It is spread across the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary by design. Power sharing takes that idea and asks how far it should go. To find the answer, we are going to look at two countries that face the exact same problem. Belgium and Sri Lanka. Same problem, opposite choices, and two completely different endings. Belgium is a small country in Europe, smaller than the state of Haryana, with a population of just over 1 crore. On a map, it looks simple. Inside, it is anything but. The country is split by language. 59% live in the Flemish region and speak Dutch. 40% live in the Wallonia region and speak French. 1% speaks German. These language communities are what we call ethnic groups. An ethnic group is a social division based on shared culture. People in the same group feel a common identity, built on shared descent, physical type, or way of life. They do not have to share a religion or a nationality. Sometimes a language is all it takes. Now here is the twist that turned Belgium into a tinderbox. The French speakers were the minority, but they were the rich and powerful minority. They got wealth and education first. The Dutch-speaking majority caught up much later, and they resented being the bigger group with the smaller share. Through the 1950s and 1960s, that resentment kept growing. And then there is Brussels, the capital, where everything flips. In the country as a whole, Dutch speakers are the majority. But inside Brussels, 80% speak French. So the national majority becomes a local minority in its own capital. Picture being the biggest team in your whole school, then walking into one hall and suddenly being outnumbered there. That is Brussels for the Dutch speakers. Whoever you were, you felt like the outsider somewhere. That feeling is how a country starts to crack. Now go south to an island just off the coast of Tamil Nadu. Sri Lanka, about 2 crore people, roughly the size of Haryana. It is just as diverse. The Sinhala speakers are the big majority at 74%. The Tamil speakers are 18%. Among the Tamils, there are 2 groups. Sri Lankan Tamils, whose families go back generations on the island, and Indian Tamils, whose ancestors came from India as plantation workers in colonial times. Most Sinhala speakers are Buddhists. Most Tamils are Hindus or Muslims. The Sri Lankan Tamils are clustered in the north and east. So both countries had the same setup, a clear majority, a large minority, and one giant question. Would the majority share or would it dominate? Sri Lanka chose to dominate. And it is worth watching exactly how, because it did not happen all at once. It happened one law at a time. The country became independent in 1948. Right away, the leaders of the Sinhala majority decided that being the biggest group meant they should run everything. That belief has a name: Majoritarianism. Majoritarianism is the belief that the majority community should be able to rule a country however it likes, ignoring the wishes and needs of the minority. It is the logic of winner takes all, scaled up to a whole nation. Whoever has the most people makes all the rules. Watch how it rolled out. In 1956, a law made Sinhala the only official language and pushed Tamil aside. Then, government jobs and university seats started going to Sinhala applicants first. Then, a new constitution declared that the state would protect and promote Buddhism. Stack those up and think about how it feels from the other side. Your language stops counting on official paper. Your shot at college shrinks. Your religion is not the favored one. No single step is a dramatic blow, it is a slow squeeze. And the Sri Lankan Tamils felt more like strangers in their own country with every step. So they pushed back. They built parties and movements, asking for their language to be recognized, for self-rule in their regions, and for a fair chance at jobs and education. Every demand hit the same wall. No. By the 1980s, some had stopped asking to share the country at all. They wanted out, a separate Tamil state called Tamil Eelam in the north and east. Distrust became conflict, and conflict became a civil war. A civil war is a violent conflict between groups inside one country, so intense that it looks like a full-scale war. Thousands died on both sides. Families fled as refugees. A country once praised for its progress was gutted. The war did not end until 2009. That is the price tag on winner takes all. Belgium had every ingredient for the same disaster. It chose the opposite recipe. The word for it is accommodation. Instead of letting one side win, the Belgian leaders sat down and redesigned the rules so that nobody could win outright. Between 1970 and 1993, they rewrote their constitution 4 separate times. The goal was not victory. It was a country where every community could live together, without any one group running the show. What they built is genuinely strange and genuinely clever. Start with the cabinet. The constitution says the central government must have an equal number of Dutch and French-speaking ministers. Not proportional, equals. And some laws cannot pass without majority support from each language group separately. So no single community can ram a decision through alone. Next, they pushed power outward. Many powers of the central government were handed to the regional governments, and those regional governments are not junior partners. They are not below the center. Real authority moved closer to the people who live with it. Then they diffused Brussels, the trickiest spot of all. Brussels got its own government, with equal representation for both communities. And here is the trade that made it work. The French speakers accepted equality in Brussels, because the Dutch speakers accepted equality at the national center. Each side gave up the chance to dominate one arena, in return for safety in the other. Belgium even invented a third kind of government, just for culture. This community government is chosen by people of one language group, Dutch, French, or German, no matter where in the country they live. It runs decisions about culture, education, and language, the things communities fear losing the most. Is it complicated? Wildly. Even Belgians admit it. But it did the one thing that mattered: it avoided civic strife, and it kept the country from splitting along language lines. And the rest of Europe noticed. When the nations of Europe formed the European Union, they placed its headquarters in Brussels. So we have 2 democracies, the same problem, and 2 endings that could not be further apart. Belgium shared and stayed whole. Sri Lanka refused and nearly tore itself in 2. Which brings us to the real question. Why does sharing actually work? There are 2 completely different answers, and clear thinkers keep them apart. The first is prudential. Prudential means based on a careful weighing of gains and losses, the practical calculation of what actually works. The prudential case is cold and simple. Sharing power lowers the chance of conflict between groups. Conflict between groups is what breeds violence and instability. So sharing power keeps the whole system stable. Crushing the minority can look like a clever shortcut in the short run. But the tyranny of the majority does not only ruin the minority. In the long run, it drags down the majority too. Sri Lanka is the proof. Think of it like a long road trip with people who get on your nerves. You could grab the wheel and ignore everyone else. But on a long enough drive, ignored passengers cause trouble and the whole car suffers for it. Sharing the decisions is not the soft option. It is the smart way to actually reach the destination. The second reason runs deeper, and it is moral. Power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. Democracy means sharing power with the people who have to live with the decisions. People have a right to be consulted on how they are governed. A government becomes legitimate when ordinary citizens, by taking part, gain a real stake in it. So one reason says share power because it works. The other says share power because it is right, results aside. We call the first prudential and the second moral. One is about better outcomes. The other is about the act of sharing being valuable all on its own. For most of history, people believed the exact opposite of all this. They thought power should sit in one place, with one ruler or one group. Spread it out, they argued, and you would never make a fast decision again. Democracy flipped that idea over. Its core principle is that people are the source of all political power, so power should reach as many of them as possible. And in a modern democracy, that sharing shows up in four main forms. The first is sharing among the different organs of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. We call this horizontal sharing because these three sit at the same level. The trick is that each one can check the others. Think of three referees watching the same match and watching each other. Ministers answer to the parliament or the state assemblies. Judges, even though the executive appoints them, can strike down its actions or unfair laws. No single organ ever gets unlimited power. This is the system of checks and balances. The second form shares power among different levels of government. There is a general government for the whole country, the federal government, which in India we call the central or union government. Below it sit governments for the regions, which we call state governments. Picture a school. Some decisions belong to the principal for the whole school at once. Others belong to a single class teacher for one room. The Constitution writes down who decides what, so the levels do not fight over the same call. This is the federal or vertical division of power. Belgium did it. Sri Lanka refused to. And it can run even lower, down to the municipality and the panchayat. The third form shares power among different social groups, such as religious and linguistic communities. Belgium's community government is one example. Another is when a country reserves seats in its legislatures for groups that might otherwise be shut out. India does this with reserved constituencies for weaker sections and women, so diverse groups get real space in government instead of feeling alienated. The fourth form is the one you can see at every election. Power is shared among political parties, pressure groups, and movements that compete for influence. The freedom to choose between rival parties is itself a kind of power sharing, because it stops power from staying in one hand forever. Sometimes that sharing is direct. Two or more parties join into an alliance to fight an election, and if they win, they run a coalition government together. And it is not only parties. Groups of traders, farmers, and workers press their interests too, and claim their own share of influence over how the country is run. Power sharing means power is never piled up in one organ, one level, or one group. It is spread out on purpose. Belgium showed that respecting every community can hold a divided country together, while Sri Lanka showed how majoritarianism can rip a nation apart. We share power for two reasons: the prudential one that it keeps the peace, and the moral one that it is the heart of democracy itself. And it takes four forms: across the organs of government, across levels of government, across social groups, and across political parties. The lesson underneath all of it is the one that sounded backwards at the start. Sharing power does not weaken a country. It is what makes a country strong enough to stay together.